Hi everyone, I'm Carol Keller, independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Illinois in the US. Excited to join you today, and I'm very excited to show you the card that I made, which uses the Blackberry, I keep forgetting the name of it, Blackberry Beauty I think is the name, sweet, and it's gorgeous. I am going to turn my camera around right away so that we can get started, and let's get started. This is called an inlaid floating technique. There's an inlay, which I'll show you, and then the floating is the strips. I've been wanting to try that floating technique for a while now, and I saw a video from Elisa Tilsner, who's another Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and she did the inlay too, and that's what gave me the idea for this card. When I saw what the beautiful papers looked like, I knew that I wanted to use it for this card. So we are going to get started right away. First, we're going to do some stamping. So I have my envelope, and this is the inside of the card, as you can see here. And this is one of the scalloped contours dies. It's the largest one. So if you're to cut this out, you need a scrap of paper that's 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches or 10 centimeters by 13.4 centimeters. And then this is just a tiny little scrap that we're going to use to stamp our little bouquet. And I did the first card and I used Memento black, and then I did actually another variation and I used gray granite because I wanted to make the flowers come into focus a little more, but I actually like the definition that the black gives, so I'm going back to that. But you have your choice. You can tell me, I'll show it one more time, you can tell me in the comments which you like better, using the gray granite to stamp or the Memento black. So let me get my stamp and my ink pad. Like I said, I've got Memento black, and we are going to stamp this beautiful little bouquet. We are going to stamp it on the inside of the card on the bottom. And we're going to stamp one to cut out. Let's see how I want to do this. I make use of every scrap, as you can see. And one on the envelope. Okay. And then while we have, whoops, a little bit of ink there, I'm going to move that out of the way. And while we're stamping and we've got the inside handy, we're going to stamp the sentiment in rich Razzleberry for our sentiment. And that goes on the inside. And then we just have one little bit more of stamping to do. But I think first, since the inside is done, I'm going to bring in my card base, which is Blackberry Bliss. Oh, actually, I'm not going to bring it in yet. We have to do some coloring first. So you can use your Stampin' blends, and I kind of would recommend that, but I did not have the cinnamon cider Stampin' blend, and that's what I wanted to use for the leaves, because even though it's non-traditional, it goes with the color palette of the designer series papers. So like I said, I don't have that blend, so I decided to use my Stampin' Right markers. And I'm also using rich Razzleberry then for the flowers. There is not a rich Razzleberry blend, but there is Blackberry Bliss, and that would match as well. So all I basically did was use the pointed end and colored, and I'm not going to do all the coloring now, but I just colored around, and I did the stems, and I actually stamped this a little bit dark. So keep that in mind. This one wasn't quite as dark, I think, because it shows the color a little bit better. So I wouldn't say stamp off necessarily, but maybe just give it a little bit of a lighter touch. And then the same thing, I used the pointed end to do the stems and add some color there. And I used the brush end to fill in the leaves. But using the black does keep that definition, which I like. So that's the idea, to use those 2 markers. And we're going to then cut this out with one of the dies from the suite. So I'm going to move these aside and bring in one. The inside is already colored, and again, I used the gray granite on this. And we're going to put it right on the inside of the card with Stampin' Seal. And so our inside is already done. And we have a little bit more stamping to do. I have a strip of rich razzleberry that's 3/4 of an inch or 1.9 centimeters long. And then it's got to be at least 2 inches or 5 centimeters long, but it's longer on purpose because I'm going to be heat embossing this and I don't want it too close to my fingers so they don't get burned. So keep that in mind. Have a strip that's long enough or use tweezers. That's another option. So I have another stamp from the set that we're going to use for the front sentiment, and I have my Versamark. And we're just going to ink that up. And so I'm going to put it toward one end and stamp that. And you can't really, oh, that's a little crooked. I think we're going to turn it over. Let's try that again. Yes, much better. So I don't know if you can see, but it is stamped with the Versamark. And then I've got my gold embossing powder. When I originally did this, I stamped it in Blackberry Bliss, and I just didn't think it gave it enough definition, and the gold works so well. So I've got actually a little package here of some gold embossing powder that the container broke. And so you just put the powder on, lay it over there, and then I can pop it right back in. And I always give it a flick a few times with my finger. Make sure there's nothing stray on there before you do your embossing, your heat embossing. And I've got my heat tool for that because I love the way the color shows up when it melts, and it just takes a few seconds. And it's like magic when that happens. There we go. And just like that, we have our embossing. I'm going to cut that down to 2 inches. Because I know that's what I need, and I'll explain why in a minute. So we've got that piece done. Then another thing is I used the Ephemera pack that comes in the suite to use this label, and I've already done a couple of cards, and there are only 2 in the pack. But I did discover that there are 2 more that are, it looks like early espresso, dark ones. So I thought, will I be able to heat emboss these with the gold? And guess what? I did. So I've got one all ready to go. And all I did was lay the this little tag into the Versamark to put Versamark on it. Laid the powder over, heated it up same way. I did need to go over a couple of sections a couple of different times to make sure there was coverage, but look at that. So now you can do 4 cards and still have them, you know, be using the same tag. And I also discovered I used the, what's it called? Let me see. Expressions in Ink Ephemera pack. And I used a bigger scrap, heat embossed again. And then I took, these are actually 2 scraps. Let me see if I can find one to show you. Here's a larger one, but they're basically inserts from tags. And I found 2 of the small ones and I just laid them over. I put some multi-purpose liquid glue on the back, which is the same thing we're going to do to adhere this. We'll leave that handy too. And I use that as well. So you do have options even besides what comes in the Ephemera pack. But all right, let's get to the fun part. Now we're going to do our strip technique here and our inlay. So I have a piece of window sheet and it's cut to 3.5 inches by 4 5/8. You probably can't see it too well, or 8.8 centimeters by 11.5 centimeters. And I have cut strips of the beautiful paper that comes in the suite at 1/2 inch wide by at least 5 inches or so long, and or 1 centimeter by, I forget what the measurement is now, by probably about 12 centimeters, I think. So at least that long. And then, I'll leave this one here because we're going to use that first. You can use your silicone craft sheet and your multi-purpose liquid glue, or you can do like I'm doing and just use your Stampin' Seal. And I like it because it's less messy. I'm not a big fan of mess, although the multi-purpose liquid glue, we're going to be using it today. It definitely has its merits. So you're just going to put your first strip up in the corner, and you have to make sure that it overlaps each side of the window sheet, and that's all you really have to remember. And then I'm actually going to cut this strip because we're going to use it for the second one as well, just turned over. And the same thing, we're going to put some seal on the back. And what I did was I used my grid paper because now I want to have an equal distance between the stripes. You don't have to. And the first one, which is this one, I actually eyeballed, and it's pretty good. I didn't do any specific measuring, and I think it looks fine. But if you want to be more exact, this is how to do it. And the other thing is you could stagger them so that there are different size spaces purposely between the layers. But if you want them exact, I've got this parallel to one of the lines in the grid paper, and I'm going to move it up half a space so that it's basically, again, eyeballing halfway between each of these two lines, because that's going to be my spacing. And then I'm going to lay it right up on the line on my grid paper, and then move it up, get the next one. And I won't do all of them, but I do want to show you the process. Move it up. And again, making sure that on the left-hand side, it's overlapping the edge of the window sheet, because you have to make sure that it goes completely across or it will kind of mess things up. So we'll do one or two more just to give you the idea. Again, using those lines. Whoops, just to make sure that it's straight. And then last but not least, I'll use this wonderful gold shimmer vellum. Oh, it's so pretty. And I will try to remember at the end to show you everything that I did use to make the cards, to make the card. All right. And so when you're all done, it looks, and you've cut it out, and I used the second largest die from the Scalloped Contours dies. So when you cut it out, it looks like this. And then we're going to take it a step further and take the same die that we used to cut this out to cut out a section in the center. And so then you end up with this. And this is what we're going to mount on the front of the card. And I really felt like this was the star, but if you wanted to, you could emboss this with the bark folder. You do some, use your Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine to use the bark embossing folder, but I really wanted this to be the star, so I did not do that. And then what we want to do to make it floating is pop it up with some dimensionals. You could also use our adhesive strips and just put them along the sections of the Designer Series paper. But I've got our black dimensionals, since this is, oops, since this is dark cardstock, I thought that made the most sense. So we're going to put everything behind, obviously, the Designer Series paper strips. And I did stay away from the gold because it's so light. That shimmer vellum, I'm afraid you'll be able to see through it. So I did not put any on the back of that one. But I would say that's probably pretty good. And then we take off our papers on the back. All right, so that just gets centered on the front of the card. And you can see I did them at different angles. You can do them straight across horizontally. You can do them vertically, whatever you think is best. I can finish coloring it, obviously, when it is already on here, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. So we've got that cut out, and now I don't want this to pop up. I want it to be an inlay so that it lays flatter than our floating frame for it. So I'm going to grab my glue dots, And put those on the back, put a few on the back. And make sure you have one close to the stem so that it keeps it flat and inside. And I'll show you, otherwise it wants to pop up. And then we're just going to sit it right in that outline that we cut. But in order to really make sure it's down, I'm using my take your pick tool, and I'm just going to do this around the edge, and that pops this back up, the frame part, and it really shows a little bit better that it is, that the inside is lower than this beautiful frame. All we have to do now is finish putting on our tag. And I am going to bring in my silicone craft mat and my multi-purpose liquid glue for that. Just putting a couple of dabs, you don't need much, and dabbing my sponge. I keep one that's just dedicated for inking. Whoops, not on there though. All right, along each edge. And you don't need much. Turn that back over the right way. And I'm going to center it over that sentiment. Press it down, give it a little bit to catch here. Yes, that's good. So I'll move these out of the way. And then I'm just taking my paper snips and snipping off the corners. All right, I'd say that looks pretty good. Isn't it cool that you can color that tag, or that, I guess tag for lack of a better word, with the embossing powder and make it gold? I love that. And I think I'm going to do a little bit more glue here because that is not sticking on that side. Yeah, I think that will be better. And then I've got my beautiful gold shimmer ribbon that is also part of the suite, and I'm just cutting a little loop here. And I'm going to use glue dots, one glue dot to hold it together in that little loop. And then I'm going to put a couple on the back. Make sure that it adheres to the card and stays put. So I'm going to put it about here, my tags, so I think it'll go about like that. And then originally for this one I did dimensionals on both sides, but it's a little higher because of the bulk of the ribbon. So I'm just going to put a dimensional and a glue dot. And that should be good. So a glue dot on the left side. Oh, and this is coming off. I'm going to have to do some re-gluing. I think I was too quick and did not put enough glue there. So I'll still show you what the finished product looks like, but I need a little bit more glue. And then it's going to sit right here. So yeah, I'll have to put that on. A little more glue. I need to be a little more generous, and that's okay. But that's our card. That's our card for today. Like I said, I'll just finish coloring it in. I love this technique. It's so pretty. It really showcases the designer series papers. So let me show you too what I used, what's in the suite, the Beauty of Tomorrow stamp set. So we used this little bouquet and then the inside sentiment, and I'm here for you for the outside. It comes with, in a bundle, with the beautiful leaves dies, which look like this, and I always die cut mine out so I know what's in there. So there's a big leaf grouping, and then 4 different sizes of single leaves, and then 3 images that you can cut out from the stamp set. So I always stamp them and then cut them out so I know what's there, and I keep that all together. I also used the 2 largest of these scalloped contours dies for the outside and the inside. And of course, the wonderful gold shimmer ribbon, the Blackberry Beauty Ephemera pack. So again, you get 4 of these, 2 in early espresso and 2 in gold, but you can use all of them just by heat embossing those early espresso ones. And then here is the beautiful gold shimmer 12 by 12 vellum. And it is one side, the other side is dull, so make sure you use the right side when you're doing your project. And last but not least, of course, the absolutely stunning Blackberry Beauty 12 by 12 Designer Series papers. And mine are cut down, they're not, because I've been using the strips. But these are the gorgeous papers, and this is specialty paper because it has gold running through everything on one side, and then the back side. That, of course, coordinates. So those are the products that I used for today's project. I do hope you like it. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you again very soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.